Hey there, Chad here with another episode of Kerbal Space Program in 2021. Now, I thought that by now I'd be making an attempt to go to the moon, and that just hasn't happened yet. And as I was kind of planning this out, I realized that there's still a few steps that need to be done before that really becomes something completely attainable. There's a few different things in research and development that I need to grab in order to be able to make that happen. So, this particular episode, I'm going to focus on going to the moon but not landing on it. We're going to do a flyby of the moon, grab some science points, a whole lot of science points actually, and it's going to allow me to purchase a few more of these nodes that will be necessary to actually land Jeb or Valentina or somebody on the moon. I have 117 points to spend. This entire column, they're all 90 points, and the one I'm going to go for today is fuel systems. The reason I'm going to go for fuel systems, there's a couple of things in here that are really helpful, but the main one is this little guy right here, the external fuel duct. What this will allow me to do is move fuel between two fuel tanks. That sounds pretty straightforward and simple, but it's very useful for doing multi-stage rockets, and we'll take a look at that here in just a minute. Now, one other thing I'm going to do real quick is upgrade the vehicle assembly building. It's a 225,000 credit upgrade, which is going to leave me with about 96,000 credits left, but it's a necessary one. The big change is it supports 255 parts on a rocket as opposed to 30, so that's a tremendous upgrade, and that will be necessary for what I want to do next. I'm also going to check mission control and see if there's anything in here that I really want to do. I'm going to get rid of some of these observational surveys. I've mentioned in other videos I really don't enjoy those. So I'm just going to close a few of those out. Atmospheric surveys. I'm going to hang on to the hulls. Some of those might work out, be a little more doable. They can become kind of complicated. And I'm going to take the ferry tourists. Those are always fairly straightforward. This one is orbit. They want to orbit Kerbal. So I'll take those. I don't think I'm going to try to complete that right this second, but maybe in the near future. So let's go back to the vehicle assembly building, and I'm going to put together a rocket and demonstrate how those external fuel ducts can be extremely helpful. Now, on this particular mission, I want it to be a science-heavy mission. I'm going to load this thing up with a ton of science stuff. And because of that, I'm going to put the experimental storage unit on it so that I can bring just that back and be good to go. I always click the wrong heat shield. If you've been watching these videos, you've seen that about 20 times. I am going to reduce the ablator on that down to its minimum of 20. We'll probably use all 20 of that on re-entry from the moon. And that'll be fine. It'll survive the return. And I'm going to put a coupler. So that'll be our top stage. That's the part that's going to come home. This rocket's going to get a little sloppy. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I'm going to put a Science Junior here. And then below Science Junior, I'm going to attach a middle-sized fuel tank and a Terrier engine. And that's how I'm going to get back to Kerbal. That'll be the return stage to bring us back from the moon. And of course we need to put a nice little decoupler down here, and that'll be the top of the rocket. Now, the translunar injection, so that's the part of the path that goes from the planet to the moon, so I guess it would be transmunar, is going to look a little different. We haven't done this before. I'm going to add 4 fuel tanks and engines. This rocket's going to be a little expensive too, if I'm being entirely honest, but the expense will work out as there's a ton of money to be made in making it to the moon. There's a lot of awards that are given to your space program when you make that happen, and so we're just going to realize some of those. And so money won't be a huge object. We're going to cut it close here. but the goal and what we will be doing at the end will take care of that. Now, this particular craft is not meant to land anywhere. It's going to fly around and then return, and that's it. So for now, I'm actually not going to use those fuel ducts here. We're going to use those in a different place. I am going to add a little bit of science here. We're going to put four goos on there. We have 5 science juniors. Those really collect a lot of points, and that's why there's that many of them. Put on thermometers, and we'll put on pressure. And we're going to use those pretty liberally as we go. Now, the lower stages of this rocket. I'm going to attach the largest of the fuel tanks, one right there, and I'm going to put the middle-sized tank. Actually, I think I'm going to do 2 of these. I think that's the right way to do it. Is that going to work? I think that'll work for here. On the very bottom, we will put a swivel engine. And before I do anything else, I'm going to put tail fins on it. There will be 4 of those. I like to put those as low as I can. Go there. Then I'm going to put on, I want to move these a little bit. I'm going to put these so they're square this way. And then I'm going to put on 4 external rockets. And we're going to do that this way. I think right about there. That's not the tank I want. I want the big one. Right there. Put a second one on. And then we are going to put Reliant rockets, engines on the bottom. On all 4 of those. Okay, so I want to make sure my thrust to weight is above 0. That's good. I need to move this engine down to here. Increases that a little more. There's a little bit of a stage here where we're at less than 0, but I think that'll work out as we move through here. Okay, and also those numbers improve as we climb, so that's good. Now, first, let's make this aerodynamic. If you saw my sidebar on the aerodynamic properties, you'll know that that is extremely important. What I want to show you about these fuel ducts, actually we'll do one more thing real quick. We'll do the structural piece here to make sure those rockets don't wiggle too much. The connection way up here, so this would kind of wiggle, but that'll make it solid. Okay, these external fuel ducts, the way they work, they're under fuel tanks. And what I'm going to do is attach it from here to here. And that'll attach all 4 of those. Now, there actually are a couple of ways to do this. I'm going to do all 4. There might even be a more efficient way, and it might be to connect 2 of these together and then connect the inner one into there, and then you eject 2 rockets at a time. This is going to eject all 4 of these when they run out. But here's the rub. All 5 of these engines will be firing. I've got that set up here. The fuel in these tanks won't be used, the middle tank here, not these, the middle tank. The fuel there will not be used until these are completely exhausted. So what we'll do is we'll go up, and once these burn out, we'll eject this. These tanks will be completely full, and this engine will continue to go. So this engine will use initially fuel from all 4 of these outer tanks. Because of the direction of flow here, you'll notice there's arrows there. The fuel will flow from this tank into that tank. So this inner tank will not be touched until these are all completely dry. That's how we're going to do this. It's a fairly straightforward mission. Otherwise, I think that will work. Let's give that a go. Okay, when I went out to the launch pad, I realized I had messed something up there a little bit. It's not a huge problem, but I had put on these medium, these FLT 400 fuel tanks. Those are too big for what I want, so I'm going to take those off. What I actually wanted was, so that was this one. I really wanted the next one down, the T200. That's this assembly. I went ahead and made one to make sure that's what I wanted. And I'm going to drop it on right there. Did not get it centered. there. That looks better. Okay. So that's actually what the rocket will look like. I also noticed that the staging was pretty bad. So I'm going to review that real quick. If you built the same rocket, you'll want to pay attention to that, but it's 5 engines in the first stage. Then we drop those outer boosters. Then we fire the 4 engines. See, we got a separation there. We want those to be 2 different steps. We want the separation first, then we'll fire those 4 engines, but actually we want to fire all 5 engines. Now this is another situation where we could allow that center engine to also use these, but I don't want to jettison these too soon because all the science is on, well, all the science junior stuff is on those. I want to hang on to that as long as possible. So instead of using the fuel duct to do that, which would probably be more efficient in the long run, because I don't want to accidentally throw this science away too soon, which I will do. I did it when I was trying to make sure I knew what I was doing in this episode. I want to make sure I have at least one safeguard to remember to collect it with the experiment storage unit before I actually throw it away. So this should be fine now. Our delta V in that looks right. So we'll get going with this one. Okay, here we are on the launch pad. I'm going to turn on the light. I am going to use the stability control. Jeb's going to help us out there. We're going to go for full blast here to start. And I'm going to use the flight engineer. I want to pay attention to the thrust to weight ratio. Let's go ahead and start the launch. So thrust to weight ratio, basically it's how much thrust there is versus what the rocket weighs. And it increases because you're losing weight on the rocket, and the engines are becoming a little more efficient potentially as you go a little higher. So a couple of reasons that climbs. But one of the things that I've learned is that keeping this closer to 1.5 in the lower atmosphere is more fuel efficient, and also it does tend to help with stability issues. Now this particular rocket, the way I built it, pretty stable. I haven't really had any problems. It does tend to want to drift off that center line just a smidge, but it's not too bad. But some rockets are difficult to fly. They really have to be in control of it the entire way to keep it from spiraling out of control. This one is not one of those. But with that said, keeping the thrust a little lower until we're out of the lower parts of the atmosphere does tend to save a little fuel, and it does help with that stability. So I'm going to give it a little more time here, and then I'm going to crank it back up. I do tend to like to have my nose in the middle of the direction we're going. Let's go ahead and fire that up full speed. You see we're at thrust to weight of 3 at this point. We're not too far from losing those engines, about 18 more seconds. Cutting those loose. Now the next stage, the thrust to weight will probably drop below 1 for a little bit. And that's okay as long as it's not a huge extended period of time. There we go. And actually we stayed just a little above 1, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to continue this attitude until we get to about 75,000 meters for the Apo. And then at that point I will try to make an orbit using the broader view. Turn this guy over here. 75 to 80 is really what I want to aim for. That'll work. So I'm going to kill the engine for a moment. I'm going to come to this view, and I'm going to plot a node here. I'm going to add a maneuver. This is just to keep this simple. So we want this to be circular as possible. And to do that, I'm going to have to kind of play with it a little bit. So I am off that center line just a touch. That should do it. That's pretty darn close. We'll go with that. Right there. I don't want to spend too much time in that window because I will run out of maneuver time. Now right now it says that burn would take 2.5 minutes. That's probably not accurate. It's probably closer to 2 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and fire the engine. Yeah, it's 2 minutes, 2 seconds. That has to do with it crossing its thresholds from what I understand of the efficiency of the engine and the altitude we're at. We just broke into vacuum. So this engine's ability changes a little bit. Should be fine. It says it needs another minute 14. We have a minute left of fuel. There'll be about 10 seconds left after ejecting this, and that not ideal. I'd rather have enough fuel on that stage to complete that part of the mission, but the Kerbals don't mind too much, so we'll just we'll go with it. This is just a matter of letting the rocket go. Again, you can see here how much fuel is left in this stage. We have about 400 meters per second, and we have about 670 at the time meters per second left to adjust. These 5 engines will fire in the next stage after I let this guy go, and that'll get us to where we're going pretty quickly. I do need to kind of maintain this a little bit. Looking pretty good so far. We're about to lose that in 1 second, and we'll go, and we'll fire the next series of engines, and now we have a lot of thrust. So we'll kill that engine here to 0. And I'm going to give it a little more, and we are at 78 and 71. We are in orbit. That's all I really wanted. So I'm actually pretty happy with that. Okay, I did just do a quick save. So you might have seen a little jump in the screen there. The reason for that is the next couple of maneuvers are important to learn, and I don't want to have to do all of that 20 minutes of stuff again if I mess it up. You quick save by pressing F5 quickly, and that will do the save. F9, you have to hold it to restore the save if you ever need to use that. So I'm going to come over here. Now, this part is interesting to me. Not sure what that line was between there. So this is the moon over here, or Mun. I like to call it moon. I'm going to go with moon. All right, so what I want to do is select the moon because that's our target. That's where we're heading. And I'm going to say select target. Look at that. And what this does is it gives me some information about what that looks like. One of the important parts is the descending and the ascending node. And what that is that tells us how far off we are on the orbital plane from the moon. 0.4 is not bad at all. In fact, that is close enough. We could actually go with it. But I'm going to demonstrate how you fix it. You get it to 0. It's pretty straightforward science and how it works. So if you look at this, if I line up my orbit so that it is perfectly flat, perfectly horizontal, you'll notice that my line, this orbit line here, is a little bit above the yellow one, which is the orbit of the moon. And you'll see it converges here a little bit. That's how we know that we're off by just a fraction. Again, this would be close enough. When you go out to like Minmus, which also is not in a planar orbit, its orbit is a little bit skewed, you have to work it a little more, and that's mostly why I want to go ahead and demonstrate this. So the easiest way to fix your plane of orbit, how to change it, is to make the change at one of the 2 nodes. You could do either one, doesn't really matter. I'm going to go ahead and pick the descending node because our next maneuver won't happen until about here anyway. So I could make the change here and then have to fast forward, wait to here. So we'll just do it all over here. What I'm going to do is right click on the ascending node, and it will lock that value in, so when I move around it will stay. I don't have to float my mouse over it like that. Then on the descending node, I'm going to add a maneuver. And all that maneuver is going to do is change that. 0 here would be close enough, but if you actually adjust it to where, whoops, a little too much. It's very sensitive because it's a very small change here. There's not a whole lot of difference in what we're doing and what we want to get to. There we go. If I make it so that the new plane, or the new line there, is 90 degrees to, or I guess maybe parallel to the tangent of where the maneuver is, that would be perfectly aligned. That would line me up exactly right. that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and go for that. You'll notice it's only 17 meters per second of change. It is next to nothing of a change to make this little adjustment. Now, if we were going for min-miss, it would be considerably bigger. Let's get this one knocked out, and then we will talk about the translunar injection, which will be the next maneuver. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and warp to the next maneuver. The maneuver will take all of a half a second to complete. And again, if we didn't even do it at all, probably would still hit the moon just fine. But let's go ahead and learn a new technique here. All right, and as that comes to a stop, I'm going to find that maneuver node, and I'm going to just point at it. Now, I could probably execute it now, and again, it'd be close enough for government work. We'd be well within the tolerance of being able to be grabbed by the moon's gravity when we get there. But because you generally would want this to be fairly precise, we're going to go ahead and try to execute it as close to exact as possible. So I'm going to wait until we get to literally 1 second on here, and then I'm just going to give it a little thrust and let this burn down and kill it when it hits the 0. Okay, here we go. Whoops. I just went a little thrust. I hit it a little early. So adding a little more, catch up, because it wasn't as much as I needed. And there it is. I actually went a little too far because I took my finger off of it on the keyboard and had to look. But if we look now, we are at 0 and 0. So we are locked in there. That is good. All right. So I accidentally named my ship LN1 while I was making sure I had the fuel tanks right. So that's what it said, focusing on LN1. All right. So the way you get an orbit to another body is typically you put the body at 3 o'clock. You look down at the body you're orbiting. You put the body you want to move to at 3 o'clock. Okay, you could do it. You could do it over here as well. However you want to do it. This is the way I learned it. You put it at 3 o'clock. You then come to 6 o'clock, and you put a node or a maneuver, and you make that maneuver. Now, what you'll see here, this is a little confusing, but we have these little things right here, moon encounter. What that means is when my ship, if I were to make this burn, my ship would start to follow this line, and when it got here, it would be pulled into the moon's gravitational field, and it would do stuff. Now, what would happen is it would jump out of the moon's gravitational field a couple hours later, and it would continue on this path, and then it would basically do a big elliptical orbit there. But this is how we ultimately get to the moon, and what we can do is play with that until we get it exactly how we want it. Now, this screen isn't ideal for that for a couple of reasons. There's a lot of moving parts. We can look at those numbers and see how close we are. We're 500,000 meters away, so 500 kilometers away from the moon there. Another way to get this lined up pretty nicely and to have a better idea of what's going on is to go over here to the moon, click it, and select focused view. Now, there is a setting here that you have to take a look at, and unfortunately, I'm not even sure I can see it here. It doesn't look like I can see it here. There is there it is, the Conic path draw mode. I think you have to have this set to relative in order for it to do what we're going to do here. There's a few different settings. I think there's 4 settings, so this makes, there's 5 there actually. I'm going to set it to relative. I'm pretty sure this is the setting, and maybe I'll make another sidebar and kind of demonstrate what these do. But ultimately, I'm not going to hit apply. I'm going to hit close because I don't want to accidentally change it on me. I will double check that, but I think you have to have that on relative, and when you do, we'll resume the flight here. When I click on this body, it shows me what that path would look like in reference to that body. So this isn't the actual orbit right now. This is the presumed orbit after this maneuver is completed. I'm going to right click on this, Now the one sad part is I don't have a great amount of control over what I'm clicking here. Just very small numbers here that I can use. But right now I'm on the prograde, so this would be adding speed, and I want to basically pull that gently until I get a nice number there that I want. Now I got too close there, and we would be inside. So actually now I'm backing it back out, basically increasing this one. The highest point on the moon is at about 8,500 meters. So as long as I'm above 8,500 meters, I will not collide with anything on the moon. So I'm going to go ahead, and 12 is actually great, 12,000 meters, perfect. If I look at this a little more closely, you'll see this is what that would look like. I could even put another, now interestingly, I could put another maneuver out here if I wanted to, and I could refine how this all would look, and that's fantastic. What we will do is, once we've cleaned this up and made it exactly how we want it, I'm going to add another, I will put in another maneuver, and we will orbit the moon. We'll put in an orbital insertion. The thing about this is, doing something out here, this is a day and a half away. It's a lot of distance. A little change here is going to make a gigantic change here. So the chance of actually nailing this, so where this is exactly what we land on with the controls that we have inside of Kerbal, if you're not using MechJeb, next to impossible to make it actually hit exactly that way. So what we'll do is I'm going to hit the tilde key to unlock from being on the moon, focused on the moon. I'm back on my ship. What I'll do is I'll execute that, and then we'll take a second look at it, see how close we are, and then we'll refine it as we move along. For now, I want to go ahead and set up that node. You'll notice that maneuver is going to cost or require 860 delta V. You'll notice I have about 1,500, so it's going to take half of the fuel that's in this stage, and that is perfectly okay. This is the harder part of the entire process for this particular series of steps that I'm taking. I'm going to slide this over a little. I do want to see if there's any science that's coming up. I have 5 of the material studies available to me. I'm going to go ahead and run one. We'll grab 25 points there. When we get out to the moon, though, we're going to be grabbing things at like 75 points. So as you'll see, we're going to collect a lot of science. One other thing I want to do is I had forgotten to clear these contracts from the last video. I'm going to clear that out so that we know when we actually do achieve something notable. And click that, and that'll go away. All right, we are closing in on this burn. Cut that a little closer than I had actually intended to. I'm going to bump this up so this thing isn't alarming constantly. I do have it turned off, so it'll just give the click sound for now. We'll turn it back on when we get a little closer to the moon. And so our burn time is 27 seconds. We want to fire at about 13 and a half, 14 seconds. I'll probably hit it at 13. Okay. Now, if I was only going to go to half throttle, I would have done it at 27. And then 27 would be before, 27 would be after, and that would have been awesome. But why have all this power if you're not going to use it? So here we go. As you can see, this mission is going to be rather long. This is about the halfway point. So I'm going to end the video here, and we will pick it up in the next episode. Until then, fair travels.